So one day I get a call from an agent saying, I think there's a guy here who I would like you to work with. He's a firefighter in Texas. And I go, no, I'm a gay New Yorker. I'm not interested in a firefighter from Texas. And he goes, no, this guy's really interesting. He's vegan. And at that point, this was, 2006 or so? Vegan was still one of those words that, vegan, from Venus, I knew it, but I didn't really know it. But I agreed to talk to this guy, Rip.
Hello and welcome to the Switch for Good podcast. I'm Alexandra Paul and I'm here for the 100th time with my amazing co-host Dotsie Bausch, who has remained as amazing and ever over 100 episodes. 2 years.
Happy 100th birthday.
Yay.
Maybe we'll live to see our real 100th and then we'll be on episode 2000.
You know what people don't know is that we didn't really know each other before we started working on this podcast together. My husband Ian had known you because he had ridden in groups with you. So right. And then you and I were on a panel together for Mercy for Animals.
Right, Circle V.
Yes, at Circle V. And I just thought you were amazing. Just your energy when you walked into the room, and I just clicked when I heard your story. And I remember thinking, yeah, this is someone with whom I can work, because I was kind of thinking about wanting to do a podcast.
Yeah. You were starting to go down the road with some folks, but I remember you telling me that it was great subject matter, but nothing that really just totally lit your heart on fire. And that if you were going to commit to something of this magnitude for the long haul, you wanted it to be something that did that to your heart, lit it on fire. I feel like I had been asked multiple times, like, oh, you should do a podcast. And I was like, ugh. I just had I couldn't summon the energy or just the desire to do it by myself. So I was like, no, that's just not my jam, not my thing. But when you called and kind of, pitched the idea that maybe we should just at least discuss it and talk about what the journey might look like and what the subject matter would be, I got so excited. I'd always admired you from afar for your activism. I so much looked up to you, still do. But when we started down the journey, it was just this really magical click that I don't know, maybe you didn't feel. I felt from just almost moment one, and I thought, this is going to be a blast. To do this with you, alongside you, and I still say that every day. When people say, "Oh, we're enjoying the podcast," I never, you guys are great hosts. Some say we're not, but whatever it might be on the 100th episode, we're going to say we're great. And I'll think, I could not do it alone.
No,
I would hate doing it alone. I couldn't imagine. And then we've had to. Well, really, you've had to go it alone once, and I remember you calling and being like, "I'm never doing that again," and I'm just not even going to try because I just would be completely verklempt in here without you.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I think because we've both had eating disorders and because we both feel so strongly about animal rights and health and our athletic backgrounds, you being an Olympian and me being just still working out every day at 57, we just had so much. And I know what it was a lot is that I knew that you would be proactive like I am, and I wouldn't have to kind of drag you along, that we'd be a really good team. And that's exactly what I still feel, that we're an amazing team. So thank you.
We both wear bossy pants. We kind of get back and forth on the bossy pants. But we GSD, right? Because we get shit done. Oh, because we got bossy pants on.
Yeah. That's exactly right. We do. So people, I say 100 episodes, they go, really? So, yeah. So I want to talk about a guy who also gets things done, because a lot of people want to write a book, but they don't. And our guest, Gene Stone, not only writes his own books and co-writes with other authors, but if you want to get a book done and you really kind of can't, he will make sure it gets done, because he is also a ghostwriter. So I don't want to, spoiler alert for folks, but a lot of nonfiction books aren't written by a single author. So there's this category of writers who collaborate with celebrities and doctors and politicians and dietitians, and they transform those folks' knowledge into a book. And this is what a good book, one that you actually want to read. And this is what our guest Gene Stone does. He's one of the most prolific among these kind of writers. He has authored, co-authored, or ghostwritten over 50 books, 15 of which were New York Times bestsellers, and 6 have been #1 national bestsellers. You and I have read a lot of his books. So Michael Greger's How Not to Die. Michael Greger's been on our podcast. Rip Esselstyn's The Engine to Diet, an amazing book. Nathan Runkle's Mercy for Animals. Ingrid Newkirk's been on this show. We talked about Animal Kind. Gene Stone co-authored it with her. And we're also going to talk about a book that he is coming out soon with Kathy Freston, who was on our show, and she talked about that book.
Yeah.
So... wow, and many, many more. So let's introduce Gene Stone, author, co-author, ghostwriter, all-round, also amazing person with such an interesting life that we want to delve into. Hello, Gene Stone, and welcome to the Switch for Good podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm so flattered to be your 100th person.
You are, and sorry it took so long to get to you, but you were really busy writing a lot of stuff, doing a lot of things. I want to start off with when you were young, and you graduated from Stanford and you got a master's from Harvard, and then you joined the Peace Corps and spent 2 years in Niger. It's so interesting because so many of your books have these important social and political messages. Can you talk to us a little bit about what made you, from your childhood, this person who cared so much about helping others and making the world a better place?
You know, you're looking for the purpose of life, and then you think, well, I don't know what it is, but maybe if I help other people, then even if I don't know what the purpose of life, I can help them find their purpose. I do sometimes wonder if the world is divided into two types of people. People who do what they want to do, and then the helper sorts. And I was just always the helper, you know? I've always really enjoyed helping other people figure out who they were, trying to get activists word out when they couldn't do it themselves. It's just always been part of my nature, but I have no idea why or where or how or where it's leading, where it's going, but I keep doing it. Yeah. I don't know.
The helper is actual personality type on a recent personality test that I took, and it's a type 2, and I was the same. So there you go. Yeah. So you navigated from, you know, very Stanford to Harvard, very studious, very academic, obviously, pursuit, and then you joined the Peace Corps, which is I don't think a typical route. What was the inspiration for that, or what made you say, okay, now I got super smart, I'm gonna head to the Peace Corps and be a type 2?
I hated Harvard. I knew I couldn't be an academic. You know, everybody grows up at a different pace. I grew up very slowly. I went to academia because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't feel I was ready for the real world. The Peace Corps offered me an opportunity to kind of delay my adulthood at the same time doing something that I thought would be really useful. But I will say that I'm never sure what Peace Corps volunteers actually do for the country they go to, but the country they go to does amazing things to the Peace Corps volunteers. And at the end of 2 years, you're a really different person because, you know, if you're a middle-class guy like me, you grew up in Westchester, New York, and you went to good schools, and then all of a sudden you're in this environment where it's life or death for people. I was in the Sahel during the drought, which made Niger one of the poorest places on earth at the time. And the shock of suddenly realizing, oh, this is really what the world is. You just don't have that opportunity. So again, I'm not sure it's like the old John F. Kennedy asked not what you can do for your country. I'm not sure what I did for that country, but that country changed me. And after that experience and seeing the poverty and the disease, you know, you want to do something. You certainly, I'd taken a leave of absence from Harvard thinking, well, I could always go back. But at that point, I didn't want to go back. I wanted to figure out how do you take this nascent activism and then turn it into something real.
Yeah. What did a typical day look like there? What did you do? What was your activities? What were your
Well,
activities?
I was an English teacher teaching people who already spoke French and Hausa and Zerma and possibly Tamilchuk, their fifth language. So it didn't exactly feel like I was, as I said, I wasn't saving the world. But I really loved my students. They really did know, they needed English. A lot of them wanted to go into diplomacy, or they wanted to do something involving trade, where English, which was turning into the world's language at that point, was necessary. So a typical day was getting up at, 6 in the morning when it was already about 90 degrees, and then teaching for a few hours. And then, believe it or not, I would play tennis in 110-degree heat because, you want to keep active. And by the time you're there for a few months, 110-degree heat isn't so bad.
Yeah.
And then in the afternoon, I would teach again and then go home and have couscous for dinner. A lot of couscous in Niger.
And you stayed there for 2 years. How do you feel that your experience then has shaped your books and the books you've chosen to write?
Well, it's we all go through different periods in life. At that point, as I said, I knew I had that helper type personality, but I really was lost as to what I wanted to do. When I came back to New York, all I knew is, I'd been an English major, was getting a PhD in English, which I never did get. So I went into publishing, thinking that I could do books. At that point, I was thinking more of editing them than writing them, because I really hadn't developed into a writer at that point. But I did want to do, and it was something that wasn't very popular at the time. Most editors wanted to do literary books, and they wanted to do prize-winning books. And I was the guy who said, no, let's do self-help books. Let's try to do books that help people. And I did a lot of those books, and I felt really good about it. And then eventually, just through a lot of very strange circumstances, I no longer had a job. So I thought, well, maybe it's time to write. And I wanted to write the same sorts of books that I'd wanted to edit. So I really wanted to always do books that in some way, shape, or form help people.
Yeah. I'm wondering if, in doing research on you, I don't know how much you talk about this, but you went through sex conversion therapy as a gay man back in the 70s. That was something that people felt that being gay back then is a lot different than being gay now. And I'm wondering if that was a part of you not finding yourself, and also you being so good at, I can see how you're a little self-deprecating, Jean, and I can, were you really good at sort of hiding your own personality and adapting to other people because you were hiding such a large part of yourself?
Would you be my shrink?
I know, she's good, right?
You just totally got me. Wow. In 5 minutes, I already feel like you totally understand me. Wow.
Tell us about
exactly.
this. Yeah, tell us about this, the sex conversion therapy and how that affected you and how that helped you actually find yourself, your real self, your gay self.
Well, I went through a particularly odd version of that conversion therapy. A lot of people are sent off to shrinks who sometimes abuse them. I mean, I'm actually on the board of directors of Truth Wins Out, which fights the ex-gay movement, because we don't believe there's any such thing as ex-gays. I think you're either born gay or you're not. So we work very hard on that. But the therapy I went through was an unusual one. I was sent off to a woman to have sex with every week on the idea from, this is a behavioral therapy, was still a major form of therapy back in the late 1970s. The idea being that if I had sex with a woman every week, by getting the motions right, then the motivation and eventually the realization that I was actually straight would follow. That did not happen. I did become very good friends with Tiger, my sex surrogate. I did have to have sex with her every week, and my straight guy friends would say, oh, poor guy, you have to have sex with a beautiful woman every week. That must be so difficult. But as a gay man, it was, because it wasn't who I was. Mm-hmm. She actually, I wrote about this in New York Magazine, and in fact, I actually have been approached about doing a TV show on it. She actually was the one who got me to realize who I really am. As the child of narcissistic parents, I'd always spent my life trying to figure out who other people were, and again, trying to be the helper. And so she was actually one of the most enormously influential people in my life in helping me figure out exactly who I was and where I could go forward from that realization.
How old were you at the time, and what was the precipitous to you going to this therapy? I mean, did you sign yourself up, or was it your parents made you go?
Well, as long as we're being so open, I was suicidally depressed. I was a reasonably attractive young guy in New York, not dating women, or if I was dating women and not really being able to establish any kind of relationship with them, and I was miserable. I just knew I wasn't who I was. And again, as Alexandra said, the 1970s, I talked to little gaylings today, and they don't get it. They don't realize back then there was just so much homophobia. Mm-hmm. And I was in publishing, which you would think would be much more open to it, and it probably was compared to finance or sports. But even so, I mean, guys around me would make gay jokes, and I was lost, just totally lost. So I was going to a shrink at that time. He recommended the therapy. As I said, Tiger and I then became close, and at the end of, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years, we decided this was pointless, at which point this is when I actually stopped basically working, because I had to go find myself all over again at the age of, I don't know, maybe I was 30 at that point, and completely lost. I just had no idea who I was, where I was going. I moved to California for a while, began to build my life up again, and at that point, I started thinking that I needed a new career. And since I knew writing and editing, I thought, well, maybe I'll try ghostwriting. I'll write these books that I feel are important instead of editing them. And that's when the new career started.
Okay.
Yeah. By the way, Dottie has talked about her suicidal depression too, and so we're all about openness here. We appreciate you sharing with us, and our audience is very used to hearing these kind of honest feelings. So thank you.
Yeah, because I mean, Tiger was a woman, and that wasn't attractive to you. Was it more of a like an emotional? Like a physical spark that just didn't then feel like an emotional spark? Because as a guy, to have sex, you have to get it up. What was that like, and how did she sort of in the beginning, make that happen? And I'm interested in just in that emotional journey for you. Gosh, in so many years. I mean, 3 years is a long time to do that every week without feeling that connection that we need to feel for lovemaking.
Or that attraction, because you don't necessarily need it. You're sounding like such a long-time married woman.
Hush.
But you don't necessarily need an emotional connection. It sounds like you had an emotional connection, but even the physical attraction wasn't there.
It's so funny when I talk to gay men who came out late. Some of them were married, some of them have kids, and many of them very much love their wives. But when they have sex with the man for the first time, it's just completely different. And this is why, despite what the right wing may say about people choosing gay, my God, I never would have chosen this. I mean, I'm perfectly at ease with it now, but what I had to go through to get here, I certainly wouldn't have chosen that. I can't explain it, but the difference between having sex with a woman and having sex with a man it's apples and oranges if you don't even like apples at all, and all you want are oranges. So the first time I had sex with a man, not only did everything work, but it had that emotional, it had the physical, it had the psychic connection that made you come alive. So again, some of these guys I know who came out so late in life, they felt when they were 50 perhaps that they really had sex for the first time when they had sex with somebody of their own gender. And it's also true with women I know who had been married perhaps and had been in relationships with men, but always knew at some level this wasn't right. And then at some point when they finally are able to have that relationship with a woman, and a fulfilling sexual one, it's just, oh, that's what sex really is.
It's like you're being reborn.
Yeah, no, it feels like that. Yeah, that way he's describing it. I know you've written articles, but have you written a book about this?
No, I did write that article for New York Magazine, and I did get some book offers. It was a very personal article, and you've already picked up that that's not really who I am. I'm more of a behind-the-scenes guy. So I wasn't ready to write a book.
Yeah.
But I'm actually thinking about doing it now, particularly as I look at what's going on in the country, both in terms of the young gays not really understanding what those old guys went through, but also trying to make it clear to the people who don't understand sexuality at all that, again, this is not a choice. This is not Satan infecting us. This is something you're born with. Remember that the generation before me, they had to go through electroshock therapy.
Yeah.
They had to go through frontal lobotomies. The things that generation went through were absolutely horrific. Yeah. And we forget all of that.
Well, it's still going on in some countries. We have to remember that
Yes.
in Russia, in Uganda, and I don't know what other countries, but I know there's, Jean, maybe you know, where you can actually get killed for being a homosexual.
Mm-hmm.
Well, most of the Middle East is like that. Outside of Israel, in Iran, Iraq, it's treacherous, it's dangerous, and possibly fatal to admit your homosexuality. But even in places like Russia, Poland is now becoming very homophobic. A lot of the Eastern European countries, particularly when they're very religious, it's almost impossible to be openly gay in. So it's in America, we're blessed with a country that at least it allows it, but given the political situation today, it's scary because the people in power right now, Pompeo is now, the Secretary of State is now trying to put through the United Nations a very anti-gay bill. And that's America leading the world in the wrong way.
Gosh, I got to encourage you to write this book, being that you're a helper. It's billions of people. You can help, obviously not just gay men, but people in my life that I want to understand from your mouth and from your experience and from your journey, who believe that it's a choice.
Yeah.
But you're bringing up something interesting. I have been a gay activist for some time.
Yeah.
I'm also a vegan activist. They don't always go together. For instance, what do I do when I'm with gay men who eat meat? What do I do with vegans who are homophobic? They don't necessarily come as one. And so sometimes I end up being very split. I care very much about gay rights. But I guess in some ways, for the last 12 or 15 years since I've become vegan, maybe I care more about animal rights and animal protection. It's a tough one when you have many things in the world you want to change, and you can't change any of them, but maybe you can help change some of them. And then what do you pick? How do you prioritize? You look at the world. I'm sure both of you look at the world every day and think, oh, I could do this so much better. I could make this happen. I could make this happen. If everybody listened to me, I could make it so much better, But then you have to pick your battles.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you've done so much. Certainly, we thank you for all that you've done with your books on animals and eating in a healthy diet. So can we move to that and talk about that? Because Dotsie and I are really interested in learning, how do you work with an author, somebody who might not, somebody wants to write a book with you, and you're the ghostwriter, so they're the top dog, but they don't know anything about writing and anything about the style of writing that works. And you have information, they have information because they're an expert in their field or they're a celebrity, but you also have that information. How do you navigate who does what work on a book? I'm sure it's different depending upon the person. Can you give us some stories? You can keep folks anonymous, of course, if you choose, because I know as a ghostwriter, sometimes you are acknowledged, but a lot of times the authors do not want to acknowledge you at all.
Mm-hmm. It's, as you just said, it's different in every situation. Luckily, I'm at a point in my career where I can pretty much pick who I want to work with. So at this point, I try to figure out who they are and what I know about them. But there's certainly been times where I've worked with extremely difficult people, people who I never ever wanted to see again. Although by the end of the book, sometimes you sort of make up. But everybody's different. I've worked with people. I will name a few names of the people I really like. For instance, Rip Esselstyn, who is pretty much one of my very closest friends. The Esselstyn's family, they're fabulous. Rip was just all excited, and he just all he wanted to do was talk and talk and talk, and we worked together, and it was just a lot of fun. If anything, it was almost too much fun, because we really got along so well. Whereas there have been a few people where you can't get anything out of them, or some people don't want to relinquish control. For instance, I'm thinking of one person who simply never trusted me, never really felt that I could do the right job. This person knew better than I did, and that book suffered as a result. I've worked with a lot of people who are very powerful, not just in the vegan world. I've worked with business leaders and all kinds of people, and the letting go of control on their part is probably the most important factor. If that person doesn't trust me, if that person doesn't feel that I can do a good job, then the book just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Every book I've started, I've finished, but I can't say that every book I've done, I'm proud of.
Oh, do you is the basics starting where you just get their story and their ideas, and then you go off and write, and then you send it in and they write? I mean, is there or do you decide beforehand how it's going to be? Like the process.
What I try to do is get a sense of each person. Sometimes I know them already, or I've been introduced to them. Sometimes they're complete strangers. Sometimes I know nothing about them. So the first thing I try to do is spend some time with them in person if possible, which is not possible now, and get a sense of who they are and what they offer and how they work. Some people want to be taped. They want to do the entire thing on the phone, and it's just a matter of my interviewing them and then going over the transcripts. Other people have just said, particularly doctors, here's all the research I've done, write the book, which is, by the way, a perfectly acceptable way of doing it. And that actually, sometimes that can be really good. Other people I've worked with wanted to write the book with me. I did a book with Blake Mycoskie, who is the founder of Tom's Shoes. The company gives away a pair of shoes, wonderful guy, just a terrific guy. And in the beginning, he wanted to write the book, and we had a kind of odd back and forth until at some point it just suddenly clicked with him. Oh, he could trust me. Right. And then after that, we worked together really well, and the book is one of the best books I think I ever did. And Blake is an amazing guy anyway. Mm-hmm. Yes. One person I worked with who insisted, because this person was very athletic and very much into exercise, that this person had 2 treadmills, and while this person was on this treadmill, I was on that treadmill, recording. Just so different with each person. And again, it goes back to what we were saying before about a helper personality. I'm the child of narcissistic parents. I learned at a very young age to please. It was my survival technique. And I still, at the age of whatever I am, still do that. I know how to please, although now I do it in order to get something that I want to get done. So it's not just this random, oh yeah, I'm a pleaser. Now I have very specific goals in mind. And although this isn't going to sound good, maybe, but I can use those people, just as they use me, to produce something that I feel is important. And by the way, although I do sometimes write my own books, I often feel that by working with other people, it's 1 and 1 equals more than 2. We can create something much greater than either one of us could have done our own.
Yeah.
That's what a real collaboration is to me, is when 1 and 1 equals 10.
Yeah. I love books if it's a memoir, because I don't really like any fiction anyway. I only read nonfiction. When the author or authors really strip it down, right, and just get super vulnerable, and you feel like you maybe could potentially be in their seat. What's the magic for you in a really great book?
Reading it or writing it?
Reading it.
Well, it's kind of what you just said, in that I think people have a sense of when they're reading something that comes from the heart and the soul rather than the head. What I don't like is when I read a book and it just sounds like somebody's created a persona that's not real, or they're trying to impress. But there are other books when you read and you know it comes from so deep inside. And even if they're not that well written, or maybe you don't even agree with the subject matter, you really feel that you've connected with somebody through their words. And to me, that's what makes a book really viable.
Yeah. Are there things that you ask of your authors, your subject matter when you're gonna co-author, before you start the journey together?
Sure. There's a whole list of things I want people to think about beforehand, and if they can't answer these questions, then it's a no-go. And they're questions. They sound kind of easy, but they really require thought. Before I answer that, just the proposal to a book, thinking about what a book is, its structure, is actually more difficult than writing the book. It's like the blueprints of a house. You can build a house, but you can't build it without the blueprint. I can't write a book unless I know exactly what it is. So what I say to anybody I'm working with is basically, what is this book? What is the promise? If a reader were to take this book home, what would they think? Who are you to that reader? What have you accomplished? What is your relationship to that reader? So I have about 10 questions I want everybody to answer. And some people can't answer them all because they haven't thought it through. Or in some cases, I help them because these are difficult questions. And as you both know, most people really aren't self-analytical. Most people go through life without thinking much about things like that. But when it's time to write a book, you have to. You can't write a book not knowing who you are, who you want the reader to think you are, what you want the reader's reward to be, what is your promise. All of those questions have to be answered ahead of time.
Yeah.
Just like you want the readers to be transformed in some way or to get something out of a book, can you give us some examples of books that changed you and maybe surprised you from what you learned working on them? Rip's book, you became vegan after working on that. Is that correct?
What happened with Rip was interesting. I was a vaguely unconscious kind of dude, pescatarian without thinking about it, without knowing that fish suffer. I probably had dairy without thinking about it because I thought, oh, well, that couldn't be so, all the things that we all know after we all have to deal with. So one day I get a call from an agent saying, I think there's a guy here who I would like you to work with. He's a firefighter in Texas. And I go, no. I'm a gay New Yorker. I'm not interested in a firefighter from Texas. And he goes, no, this guy's really interesting. He's vegan. And at that point, this was, 2006 or so? Vegan was still one of those words that, vegan, from Venus, I knew it, but I didn't really know it. But I agreed to talk to this guy, Rip. So we get on the phone, and Rip, have you had Rip on your program?
Not yet. We aspire to that.
Not yet. I know him through Game Changers. Spent some time
you
with
will.
him.
You'll get him on
awesome.
your show. I'll tell him how great you guys are. But Rip is like one of the most enthusiastic people in the world. And so not only was like a half an hour we'd become best friends, it turned out that his grandfather had saved my mother's life in one of those, oh my God, the world is just too small,
Tell us that story.
What?
His grandfather was Barney Cryle, who was known as the savior of the American breast, because he was the first doctor in America at a time when, as you probably know, women had no choice in their medical decisions, and there were so few women doctors. Barney Cryle was the first one who said, no, we don't have to take off women's breasts. We can do a lumpectomy. We don't have to do radical mastectomies. And my mother at that time had breast cancer. She's a very vain woman. She had very good qualities, but she also had some not so good qualities. And she said, no, I'm going to die. And she'd stored up pills. And she said, I'm not going to lose my breasts. I really would rather die. And she meant it. Then she met Barney, and he did a lumpectomy on her and kept her alive for another 30 years. Anyway, that's Rip's grandfather.
Wow.
So obviously Rip and I started to bond. And so by the end of maybe our second conversation, he goes, so what do you think? And I go, yeah, I'll totally write your book. And, I guess I have to go vegan to do it, right? And I have to say, if you're going to go vegan, you want to have Rip as your coach, because every day, what'd you eat today? What'd you have? No, you can't have that. No. What'd you eat? No, you can't have, no processed food. No, you can't have oil. What are you doing here? You can't have oil. Do you know how much fat is in 1 teaspoon? No, you can't do it was great.
Well, you obviously stuck to it after you had finished the book.
Rip and I wrote 3 more books, but what happened at that point is I was up at the Esselstyn farm, which is like, if you were doing a documentary on veganism as pure and loving and warm. You would go to the Esselstyn farm where all of these fabulous Esselstyns are eating healthy and looking great. And then one day when I was up there, I met this guy named Brian Wendell, who is working on this Forks Over Knives project. And I said to Brian, well, you should have a book. I could write a book at the same time as you're doing the documentary, and then they could come out at the same time. And Brian, to his credit, not everybody gets things like that, but Brian's a really smart guy, and he goes, yeah, that makes sense. So then I started working on Forks Over Knives, and that led me to meeting Gene Bauer, who, of course, I said, oh my God, your name is Gene. Nobody's named Gene. We're both named Gene. This is amazing. Gene and I became really close friends, the only friend I've ever had named Gene. And so we wrote the Farm Sanctuary book together. So by that time, I'd been a health vegan, and then I saw all of the issues pertaining to animal protection. I started caring about that so much. But I also met a guy named Neil Zacharias, who is from One Green Planet, and he and I were having conversations about the effect of animal agriculture on the environment. And then I thought, we need to do a book on that. So we wrote a book called, and that wasn't a ghostwriting book, we wrote that as equals. So we wrote Eat for the Planet together, and then we wrote Eat for the Planet cookbook. So it's just been like, a snowball rolling down until it's become an avalanche of I care about everything having to do with plant-based diets.
And all those books have done very well. A lot of them were, if not all of them, were bestsellers, the ones you mentioned. You also, of course...
Few of them didn't do so well, I have to admit. Some of them have done enormously well. And, look, it's you never know with books. Sometimes you have a book that you think is going to be a bestseller, and it just goes... Other times you have a book that, I don't know if anyone... Actually, in fact, I'll be really honest. When I signed on to do Rip's book, remember how long ago this was when veganism was, I was thinking, this book's not going to work. I think it's important, but I don't see this book doing all that well. I was thinking of it almost as much as pro bono work. And then that book became a huge bestseller. So I'm wrong half the time. So.
Yeah. Well, is there a thread of kind of magic that now that you look back? I mean, you're still writing, and so this is important for the future too. But as you look back with what you have written and the ones that kind of have hit it, what's the thread of magic between them?
I wish I knew.
Yeah, you're not. It's wow.
If I knew that, I would just write huge bestsellers every time. I will say a lot of it has to do with the collaborators' ability to promote. For instance, Michael Greger, who's an extraordinary man, is also an extraordinary promoter, not for himself, but for his mission, for nutritionfacts.org. So here's Michael constantly out there doing everything he can to get people to become aware of what nutritionfacts.org does and says. And I think the reason that book became a really big seller, it's a good book, but Michael is such an extraordinary promoter of the mission.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. And I'm a Michael Greger fan. My mother teases me about how much I quote Michael Greger.
She does.
Yes.
That's the fattest book I've ever seen. I will not say I read the whole book. Well, how long did that one take?
A long time.
Yeah.
It was very interesting on that book. If you notice, there are a huge number of footnotes in the back of the book. That was a big argument with the publisher. They did not want those footnotes in there. I insisted, because I said that to have a book like this come out that really will hit people in a weird tangent. They're not thinking about this. They don't believe that a plant-based diet can prevent or reverse diseases. You need to have these things right there so people can check. Yeah. So we went back and forth, and I don't know if you noticed, but finally they agreed to put them in small type, but they're there. But the book is that fat in part because we really wanted to document, to make sure that people knew that he wasn't pulling these things out of thin air. No. He studies and he researches and he collates, and everything in that book is documented. And I think another reason that it's sold is Michael is such a meticulous researcher.
Yeah, he is. And it's an amazing book.
You can't have a Michael Greger book without the references. I mean, it's just like impossible to put something like that out. Yeah.
So you've written books on business, politics, how to survive the Trump years, the Bush years, business books. You now seem to be focusing wholly on books about health and animals. Is this because of your heart or because it's a good business move?
That's a really good question. I I would like to say the former, but it's also the latter. There's no question it's a good business move. My next book coming out is a book I did with Eric Adams, who is the borough president of. Has he been on your show?
Yes. We've had Nils on our show, and Eric and Kathy. A lot of your.
So I assume you've had everybody on your show. I worked on Eric's book, which is coming out in October. It's called Healthy at Last, and I think it's going to be very influential in getting people of color to understand why they should go plant-based. Yeah. And then my great pal Kathy Freston and I wrote a book together, and this is also that's not a collaboration. That was the two of us together, called 72 Reasons to Be Vegan, and that is coming out in December. But after that, the next book I'm doing is not with somebody who's vegan. In the middle of this pandemic, I moved to Los Angeles because I wanted to take time off. I've been writing so much. I thought it would be really great to come to LA. I'll have fun. I'll meet people. It'll be the social year of my life. And of course, it hasn't worked out that way. It's been actually kind of bad.
And now you have the fires.
If you know people in LA, you have to introduce me to people. I need to meet more people. But I did get a call from National Geographic about a guy named Sean Garrity, who lives in Montana, former Silicon Valley guy, who is now starting the country's largest land conservancy. He has 1.5 million acres. He's going up to 3 million acres in Montana, restoring the prairie to its original state as it was with flora and fauna in the 19th century. It's a remarkable project that he's doing. And so it's not necessarily a vegan project, but what he's doing really touches me, the idea that we can restore nature to the way it was before we came and pretty much destroyed it. So that's a project that means a lot to me also.
You know, since Dotsie and I have done our 100th, I'm just going to keep repeating it, our 100th episode, I've learned a lot from the people whom we have interviewed. And so I'm sure you've learned so much that surprised you, like this information about how to regenerate land or even turning vegan because of Rip. Is there anything else that you find is really, when you think of the work that you've done with folks, that has really affected your day-to-day life and made you happier, better?
Well, it's another good question, and it's a tough one. Well, certainly going vegan itself has changed my life because I was kind of unconscious about health, and not unconscious about health. I wrote a book I'm very proud of with the medical directors of Canyon Ranch that I thought was quite good, and many other medical books, but I was unaware really of the connection between health and animals, and specifically about the importance of diet. So, I mean, my life is completely different. I'm, a proud plant-based kind of guy, and I certainly will be that for the rest of my life. So I can't imagine a bigger change than something like that. And that certainly came out of Rip, who, as I said, I really owe all of that to. He's the one he flipped me.
There you go. Good job. Is there, I'm excited about the 72 reasons to be vegan. Kathy's a friend. She's on our board of directors at the nonprofit Switch for Good, actually. Okay. And she emailed me yesterday afternoon about doing a blurb for this. So I'm going to get to dive a lot more into it from her link. But so 72 reasons, that's a lot. There's probably more, right? But what are a couple that maybe our audience would not, think of as a the top 10 reason or something? Are there some surprising ones in there?
Are there surprising ones? Not to you guys, you would know them all. To the audience, we had go over things that, I'm sure you know this all the time. The protein, where do you get your protein from? Where do you get your calcium from? Right. Do you lose weight? Can you still be an athlete? So, actually, my favorite reason, unfortunately, just got taken out of the book at the last minute because
you can share it with us then, and we'll pass it along.
My favorite reason is that a friend of mine who is a watchmaker, one of the top watchmakers in the country, he went vegan, and I thought it was, because it's me, I'm such a great role model. And he goes, well, no, it's not because of you. He's a real science fiction guy, loves science fiction, it's his whole life. So his theory is that if aliens came to this planet and they saw us eating animals, either they would be so disgusted they would leave, or they would say, well, that gives us permission to eat you. Yes. So they would just eat us all. So,
I
okay.
thought that got taken out.
That is classic.
definitely the best one.
That's classic. I love it. Oh my gosh. You also wrote a book called Secrets of People Who Never Get Sick. So can you tell us a couple secrets? I heard that cold showers was one of them. And because of several of our guests, I've been taking cold showers.
Yeah, this was a book I did on my own because at that point in my life, I'd written so many articles about medicine. I'd known so many doctors. I'd got so many conflicting, do this, do that, do this, do that. So I thought, I've got all this research. So I did put it together, and it did very well. It was, I think, like 40 countries bought it. And I was very proud of that because it's always exciting when you get a book and it's in Latvian. And you go, oh, Latvian, or it's in Czech, or you just think, oh gosh, wow, all these languages. I don't know any of them and I can't do anything with these books, but they're mine. So cold showers was probably one of the stranger ones, and yet there's a lot of research that says that it is very good for your health. It boosts your immune system. Basically, all of the secrets are really about boosting your immune system in one form or the other. But what I decided by the end of the book is that it wasn't as much the secret itself as it was your belief in the secret. In other words, I really do believe there's a mind-body connection when it comes to health. And if you really believe you have this secret that will keep you healthy, that is as much as the secret itself.
So that's why the 97-year-olds who say, that cigar every day, or,
right. Or the gin every night. Yeah. And
I learned something interesting from the Canyon Ranch doctors. They were saying that there's such a thing as what they were calling the immortality gene. We all know these 97-year-olds who drink and smoke and never exercise, and they're still going strong. There seems to be some predilection genetically for certain people to just be able to do that. They can go through their whole life, do everything wrong, make every bad lifestyle choice possible, and yet they're fine. And there's a number of people who are the opposite. They'll do every lifestyle choice appropriately, and they'll die of a heart attack at 48. For some of us, it does seem that we are genetically programmed to go, but that's a small minority on each side of the pendulum. For most of us, it really is about lifestyle choices and our ability to think ourselves to wellness and to act ourselves into wellness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's with the work that Ornish has done. There's kind of like those 5 stars. You could eat a really bad diet, but if you have extremely low stress and really rich, nourishing relationships and are happy most of the time, those can possibly outweigh or combat that bad diet. So, but if you had all of it, maybe you'd be,
One of the other things I really learned in doing The Secrets of People and writing about medicine for such a long time is if you want to prove, let's say, that coffee is good for you, you can do that. If you want to prove that coffee is bad for you, you can do that. If you want to prove running is good, you can find a study to prove everything. Now, a lot of times, as you well know, those studies are funded by a organization that has a very deep-seated need for you to come up with a particular thing. Do you remember that?
Always.
They said that that sugar was so bad for us, and it made kids hyperactive, and just was well, it turned out that study, which everybody just took on face value about sugar making children hyperactive, was sponsored by the artificial sweetener business.
Sure.
So of course that's what they said.
Right. Are you saying so is sugar good for us? Because that would be nice.
Well, not like that.
Oh, you can find the study. Yeah, on both sides. I mean, on the plant-based side too, right? Like those studies are funded by the people that want them to come out a certain way. Nobody's going to pay for something that they don't want to emerge.
So you've written actually a novel, and I don't think Dotsie's not going to read it because she doesn't read novels. But
I read novels. I just don't like fiction.
You can read his other 75 nonfiction books, though.
Okay, thank you.
This is called The Awareness. And because I really wonder sometimes, I do think storytelling is often the most effective way to get people to change their minds. A book like Uncle Tom's Cabin probably did more to get people to understand the perils of slavery than any legislation or any editorial. So I wanted to do something that would be a story. So I wrote a book about what would happen the day that animals suddenly got human consciousness and were just the same as us in terms of their thinking and vocabulary and thought process, et cetera. And of course, what they do is they immediately go to war because they're all so angry at everything that we did to them. So it's a book about an elephant, a pig, a bear, and a dog. and what the four of them have to do in terms of, do they go to war against humans? How do they do it? And I'm actually, I'm going to just say it, I'm very proud of it. And I would love it if people listening or watching could go out and buy The Awareness.
I am in.
But I actually don't read a lot of. I don't read a lot of fiction either.
We're reading this one.
Okay.
We will get back to you on that.
You are reading this one. You are reading. If you want to get me on the program, actually, I'll go on the program.
Okay. Gosh, cool. All right. Yeah.
So
everyone go get it.
Yeah. I heard you say that we lose portions of ourselves as we go through life, and tell us a little bit about what you mean, because when we talk to you, it seems like you've added and added to your life.
What I meant was that, and this is when I was talking about my sex therapy and such, that life is difficult, and we start off with such potential, and then maybe we have bad parents, or we have an accident, or we have a terrible time in school, and our fullest potential just keeps being knocked down and knocked down. Maybe we're 90% or 70% or 50% of who we could be. And I think that life's battle as we mature is to get those percentages back. I don't think I could ever be 100% of who I might have been able to have been, but I feel like at my lowest, where I may have only been 30%, I've clawed my way back to 60 or 70, but I'm still trying. I think, it's a lifetime journey. And I would like to think that when I'm 95, I'm still going to be figuring out who I am and what I can do, and maybe do something really great. And maybe the last thing I will do in life is going to be the greatest thing I ever did.
I think you've already done so many great things, because you've reached so many people with so many important messages.
And yet I don't think I don't see that. I see myself as not having fulfilled my reason to be on Earth. I had, there's a guy named Dr. Fulford, who was Andy Weil, Dr. Andrew Weil, spontaneous healing. This was a 90-year-old osteopath who was considered to be the world's greatest healer. And I was fortunate enough to be selected to write his book. It was like meeting Yoda. This guy was the most extraordinary doctor, most extraordinary human I think I ever met in my life. And he left me with so many things to think about. But one of the things he said was that we all come to life with a mission. And what our life is the ability to fulfill that mission. I asked him if he'd fulfilled his mission. My God, who had done more than he had? He said no, that he would have to come back because he believed in reincarnation. But it made me think, what is my mission? And it made me ask other people, what is your mission? Why are you here? And what are you doing about it? And are you getting it done? And I don't think I've fulfilled it. I think I'm still struggling to get there.
But you're on the path. Do you feel like you're on the path? Because I feel like I'm on my path. I know what's important and and Dotsie, I'm sure you also feel like you're on the path.
I don't know. I can relate to that, but I think that setting aside of ego, because so many people look at you as like, you could easily just rest on your laurels now, but that the way that you speak about it and kind of the fervency almost that you say, I'm not, almost like you haven't even scratched the surface yet, is what makes you great and going to be able to continue to share and change the world.
Well, thank you. But I really do believe that I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to believe that, because
Right.
I don't want to rest.
You're right.
Because that would be the antithesis of being on a path. If you're on a wonderful path someplace, you don't just stop.
No, but I'm on a path, and I'm excited about keeping on the path, helping people live a better, healthier, happier life, and helping humans and animals in all sorts of ways. So
what you guys are
I just
doing is
want to
great.
empower you.
You're on the treadmill.
Yeah,
You are on your
and you actually are.
At least admit that.
So when you've spoken to so many humans about their inner self, and their probably a lot of facts and figures of doctors, but also humans about their life. Is there anything that you've come away with about the we humans as a species that's either good or maybe not so good?
Well, it is sometimes very hard not to be kind of pessimistic You look at the world and you see the human potential and just how extraordinary humans can be. And then you see the reality of what humans are doing. And it's difficult. Sometimes I admit, I get really depressed, I'll see what's going on with animals. And of course, as you both know, if you're on Facebook or you're connected to people working in animal protection, you see all these videos of just horrible things. And you just, oh man, you just don't want to deal with it anymore. Mm-hmm. But you don't give up. You have to keep trying, because if we were all to give up, then it would be much worse. So you struggle. I think it is a struggle, and it can be very depressing. But that's not the worst thing. I think having a sense of fulfillment and a sense of mission, even when you're really depressed about it, can override it and can keep you going. And it's what you just said a minute ago about not leaving the country. You don't leave your mission, you don't leave the country, you keep on going. And like what you guys are doing with the podcast is wonderful, and I think you're probably affecting a lot of people. So you guys should feel really good about what you do too.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being on our 100th show. It's perfect to have you on at this time.
Can I come back for the 200th?
Yeah. All right, deal. Yes,
because we
that
know
is awesome.
You will have written another, 30 books.
Right,
So we'll have a lot to talk about.
We'll have so much more new material. Yeah. Keep fighting, because what the three of us I know have that spirit of, if we were to think of doing anything else, it's like not an option. We're just going to keep fighting. Yeah. I've loved every second of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list, where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.